Hi. So here is an archer, okay, and he's standing, he's drawn the arrow, and that arrow is stretched behind. The bowstring is really taut, and he's concentrating on that target which that arrow has to reach. And the spin drops silence. There's a lot of audience waiting expectantly at that particular episode, that event. And the archer then concentrates and releases that arrow. It shoots out. The question is, where is the concentration of the audience? Is it on the target? Is it on that archer? Is it on the activities which that archer is doing? Is it what are they noticing? So hi, my name is Sabu Francis, and this is yet another episode of Archopus. I'm making this video in the night, and I think I've not yet got the lighting correctly, but nevertheless, there is nothing much to really see, so you can probably switch off the video and listen to this. What I'm addressing today is a very, very important point on learning. Learning is different from experiencing the product of that learning. Now, what does that mean? When we experience things, I've got this mobile phone here, or I've got this headphones here, and we have all kinds of things happening around us. We get into a building, we open a door, we experience that building. That's one set of things, right, which is happening. That's the experience. That's known as empirical experience. It is coming into our mind through our senses. We eat food. That's an experience, right? That's a physical experience. We are tasting that food. But now, when you look at all this as a student who is going to produce such experiences eventually for yourself or others, can you be looking at that subject in the same manner as the way you would experience it? I don't think so. You take food, for example. If I'm eating food and I'm eating some lovely biryani or whatever, that's one set of experience, very nice. But if somebody is going to teach me how to make that biryani, I obviously cannot start with that experience, and then concentrate all my attention on the final experience. So when the archer is drawing that arrow and tightening that bowstring, the audience concentrating on the target because they want that arrow to hit that target. That's all nice. That's a part of that experience. But if you want to learn archery, you cannot be concentrating only on that target. You have to know what all things you're doing here at this end before the arrow flies off. In architecture, so many times architecture is narrated and explained to students as experiences. So somebody puts up a chart of a building, very nice building, it's won some awards, and then goes around explaining that building from that point backwards. So here is a building by Frank Lloyd Wright, or here is a building by Gehry or Louis Kahn or whatever. And then there are theories which kind of stitch up, in the Louvre, Ayampai made a pyramid and it looks like this and whatever, and there's some philosophy, and then you're starting with that experience and then going back and back and back, and a lot of times these experience narrations are all speculative. It is read from some book and then it is narrated to the student. Many of these explanations are based on the feelings of that particular teacher. Now, of course, some part of it is all important, and nice. It's not that you don't talk about the target, but in this process, the students get a different impression of what architecture is all about and how do you learn architecture. And that's why my theory is that a lot of architectural designing is done by students by sketching out things and seeing how it looks, because that's how it was being explained, that this building looked like this, and this is what Frank Lloyd Wright did that. There is another thing which needs to be done according to me, and what I am trying to tell students here is that even if you hear such talks and lectures, you need to invert that process and ask yourself, do you have all the knowledge to really get that experience and that evocative beauty or whatever notional values which you saw in that piece of architecture by just drawing that out? I mean, is that all that is needed? What I believe you should do as a student and what teachers should do is also to step into what that archer did, what that architect did, and what all things did he consider, what all things he considered and threw away, and what other alternatives were there for that particular design to come up. Unless that part of the story, unless the drawing the arrow part of the story is not narrated, you have only the final experience part of that architecture, and that's left you in a vacuum, to be very honest. This examples are not analogies actually. Like when I say about cooking or when I say about archery, or this is actually parallels. These are all parallels. You can see that in every creation. You cannot stitch back the experience of a creation and then understand how that creation happened, because what you did to create something is different from what you experience that creation, how people experience that creation. And to orient students, many times fresh students of architecture, they come into college and they have this wonderful expectant look on their face that now I am going to learn how to design architecture, and if all I do is to mesmerize them and hypnotize them with beautiful pictures and sketches and tell them to keep sketching until they get it right, that's like telling that audience of around that archer that please be focused on that particular target over there. You see how the circles are concentric circles over there in the target, and see where the arrow is hitting, and now you try to understand how the arrow must have come from the archer. And the last part is probably a little bit about how that archery happened. But a lot of these kind of talk which talks only about experience is not going to serve any great purpose. I think we need to, after having excited the students, say I'm discussing falling waters, and then when I discuss falling waters of Frank Lloyd Wright, of course I will excite them by showing some photographs and all that. But then I need to tell those students that, okay, I mean, it's not all hunky-dory and all you have to do is just keep sketching out till you get that thing right. But instead, you concentrate on the backstory behind that particular design and what was the context in which that particular design came, and who was the client, and what type of problems did Frank Lloyd Wright have in case such information is available. What was the situation which was there when that design emerged? And there is this story coincidentally about falling waters, that Frank Lloyd Wright seemingly was not ready with the design when the client came walking into this office to know what the design was. And the story goes that Frank Lloyd Wright got somebody in the office to show the client around, saying that, we are doing this, and this is how we work. And in that meantime, when that guy was moving around, when the client was moving around, Frank Lloyd Wright reputedly was sketching out and then getting ready with the design, which he could then show the client. Now, I don't know how true this is, but if this is true, then we have to as a teacher, we have to ask our students one important question, that maybe Frank Lloyd Wright could have done something even better than what came up over there. What came up was that design, and of course it's a masterpiece, and people appreciate it. It's a heritage building and all that. But there are defects in that building, actually. Some of the cantilevers are drooping. That's what I heard. And some part of it is even drooping about 6 inches down. They're nice big cantilevers. They look nice in sketches and photographs. So when you humanize that process and you talk about the details, then you're leaving the student with a lot of questions that, okay, maybe that was not the right way to design. But there could be other explanation. There could be, it has happened to me in my practice where seemingly I came up with a design over a day. Now, of course, it is not one day's work which really happened. So I don't want to spread some mythology about this. I was discussing in my own mind and trying out various different alternatives of a particular building. But what finally I could express to my staff in my office, that particular event happened only over a day, and then we finished the drawings over a day. And as they say, rest is history. Not that I made a great building, but there are situations like that where there's a lot of meat under the sea level. You only see the tip of the iceberg. So of course architects seem to have done an amazing design in just a few hours or in a day, but the truth may be a lot more complex, where that architect was struggling with that design and was stretching that arrow and stressing that particular string for a long time before letting it go. Now, this metaphor of stretching that bowstring and then tensioning it and taking the arrow back is a very useful metaphor, because when you work out on a design, the real truth is that there are times when you are going backwards. You're not really going towards the target where you need to produce that particular building, but you're asking a lot more deeper questions in architecture. You're talking about maybe sustainability, you're talking about ecology, you're talking about climatology for sure, site, location, people, behavior. There's a million questions which is taking you away from the final production drawings of that particular design. So when students learn architecture, and if they start getting the impression that all we have to do is just keep sketching, and then it magically turns out right, because something in the brain or the collective brain of the teachers and the students say that, oh, this is right, that's a major disaster according to me. Instead, spend a lot of time understanding what all things you need to do in your studio, and what all points to be considered in architecture for that particular project, and make them sensitized to the complex parts or the intricate parts of the designing process. The designing process is surely different from the designed product. And if all the focus was only on the product to make it look nice, and it looks like this and look like this, let's look at it from this way, that is a very poor way of talking about design. While learning architecture, you need to cover all the way of what did that particular person do, how did he stretch that particular arrow, what was he focused, where was his shoulder. There are a million things happening there. And only if that gets done right, will that arrow go in the right manner. So in architectural design, if teachers and students start learning it from the experience of architecture, That's a very poor and very inefficient way to talk about design. Finally, you must realize that all this master architecture which is there, even pyramids or the Taj Mahal or all of them, there is just one over there, right? You don't have, you can't stand in front of a building with a remote and say, okay, I don't like this building, give me another alternative. And that architect has designed another alternative, and you flick a switch on that remote and suddenly you have a new experience over there. That's not happening. That doesn't happen. So when people talk about great works of architecture, Sydney Opera House, you talk about whatever, Notre Dame or Taj Mahal or whatever, what we as practitioners of architecture, where we design architecture, we need to know what other alternatives were considered and then rejected to make that one Taj Mahal. That would be very useful, because then we are concentrating on the process of that kind of elimination from those set of alternatives. I'll be touching upon this particular way of using your brain and your logic in another topic. It's called abductive logic and abductive reasoning, which is a very, very well understood subject in other areas, but unfortunately in architecture colleges these things are not taught, but we should address that at some point. So I hope this is useful. In Archopus, we are trying to collect many such topics together so that your understanding of architecture becomes really nice and you become a really good architect. There will be other mentors over there in archopus.com, and we will be teaching architecture, various aspects of architecture. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next videos. Thank you.